I was 4 months pregnant when I came home from a 12-hour surgery and found my apartment completely empty. My husband had taken everything, leaving only the baby clothes on the floor. 4 months pregnant, I worked 12 hours on a complex trauma surgery at Harborview Medical Center. When I came home that September night, my apartment was completely empty. My husband had taken everything while I was saving lives at the hospital, leaving only the baby clothes scattered across the living room floor like a silent message of abandonment. But let me go back a bit, because this story didn't start with an empty apartment and a broken heart. It started with a magical kiss at a party in Seattle, 33 years after I was born, not knowing who my real father was. It started with the illusion that teenage love can resurface perfect after decades. It started with the most dangerous lie a woman can believe, that knowing someone for a long time means truly knowing them. My name is Amanda. I was born in 1975 in a small Oregon town called Grants Pass, where the trees are taller than the buildings and everyone knows everyone. And I spent my entire childhood hearing a man tell me, "You're not my daughter. You're Robert's git," until my mother had the courage to put us on a Greyhound bus with our clothes packed in black trash bags and flee to Seattle in the middle of the night. I grew up in Seattle without a father, with a warrior mother named Linda who worked at anything that came up, cleaning houses, watching children, doing head jobs, just to put food on the table. I discovered at 15 that my biological father was my mother's brother, a man named Robert, who had a secret 8-year romance with her while they were both married to other people, an affair that exploded when I was born looking exactly like him, with the same eyes, the same smile, the same curve of the chin. But that's another story, a story I'll tell another day. This story is about Kyle, about how I found what I thought was the love of my life at 33, when I had already given up on fairy tales, and about how 18 months later I was pregnant with a baby I didn't want, betrayed by a man I loved, and completely alone in a city where I thought I had built a safe life. I'd known Kyle since we were teenagers, since the 80s when we had big hair and wore jean jackets. We were part of the same crew that hung out on the corner after school at Ballard High School. You know that crowd? The good-looking guys with motorcycles, cool cars, those London fog sweatshirts. Everyone wanted that vibe that made you feel special just being around them. Kyle was one of those guys, handsome, charming, always had a joke ready, always making everyone laugh. Life took everyone in different directions after school. I had my daughter Emma at 17 with a teenage boyfriend, a planned baby because we thought we knew what love was. I worked hard, studied at night, became a surgical technologist, that professional who stands next to the surgeon passing instruments during operations. Kyle went on with his life, had kids, worked for a wealthy Seattle family, taking care of their properties. But our crew would reunite every 2 or 3 years at birthday parties, weddings, summer barbecues, where we'd reminisce about the old days. And it was at one of those parties in 2008, at a house in Capitol Hill with loud music and cold beer, that everything changed. We were talking in the backyard, laughing, remembering that time we skipped class to go to the beach, that annoying math teacher, that first rock concert we went to together. And out of nowhere, in the middle of some random story, our eyes met, and we kissed. A kiss that stopped time, that made the noise of the party disappear, that gave me that knot in my stomach you haven't felt since you were a teenager. We pulled apart and looked at each other with that expression of surprise mixed with fear. What did we just do? I whispered. We've been friends for 20 years? Is this going to ruin everything? Kyle laughed, ran his hand through his hair the way he always did when he got nervous, and said, "Either we just ruined a friendship, or we just started something incredible. Want to find out?" But something had been born there. Something we didn't understand, but that was too strong to ignore, too intense to pretend hadn't happened. So we decided to try. Let's date. See where it goes. Explore this chemistry that appeared out of nowhere after 2 decades of friendship. After all, he was 37, I was 33. We weren't kids playing house anymore. We were adults who knew what we wanted, who had known each other for years, who had stories in common, friends in common, memories in common, and it was perfect. I swear to God, it was perfect in those first months. Everything I'd dreamed about in a marriage since I was a little girl doodling wedding dresses in my school notebook, he wanted too. The baby blue dress I'd been designing in my head since childhood, with yards and yards of fabric and delicate lace. Kyle looked at me and said, "Then that's how it'll be. It's your day. It's your dream." The Episcopal Church downtown Seattle that I always thought was beautiful when I'd pass it on the bus. We got it. The date in June when the flowers are blooming. We got it. Everything fit together like pieces of a puzzle that finally made sense. In June 2010, I got married in a baby blue dress that looked like something out of a fairy tale. A 6-meter organza veil that floated when I walked, surrounded by all my childhood and teenage friends. The church was full of white roses and lit candles. My daughter, Emma, looked beautiful, as maid of honor. My mother cried good tears this time, not the bad tears from my abusive stepfather days. It was the perfect day I'd been waiting for my whole life. At the end of the reception, when most of the guests had already left and it was just us and a few close friends drinking the last drinks, I smoked back then and realized I was out of cigarettes. I looked at Kyle all elegant in his suit and tie and said, "I'm out of cigarettes. Need to go to the gas station." He laughed in that way of his and replied, "I'm wearing my suit till the last minute, so let's go together." And off we went, me in my wedding dress with that giant gown, him in his full suit, stopping at the corner gas station at 3 a.m. to buy a pack of Marlboros. We went home, dead tired and happy, with that good exhaustion of someone who danced all night. The first 6 months were exactly what I'd always wanted, what I'd seen in movies and thought didn't exist in real life. Kyle took care of me, asked how my day at the hospital was, worried about the house bills, divided household chores without me having to ask. We did everything together, grocery shopping on Saturdays, watching series on the couch, cooking dinner together, listening to music. We were husband and wife, but we were also best friends, partners, accomplices. Before getting married, sitting on that same couch where we spent our evenings, I had made it clear looking into his eyes. We can't have children. I have severe endometriosis. It's a complex and painful treatment. The chances are minimal. You already have kids from your previous marriage. I have Emma too. We don't need more babies to be happy. Kyle held my hand and agreed without hesitation. That's fine. We already have our family. It's the two of us, and that's perfect. But then, 6 months after the wedding, on some random winter night when we were lying in bed talking about the day, he said something that gave me chills in a strange way. He turned to me with that absolute certainty in his eyes, that conviction that left no room for doubt, and said, "You got pregnant today." I know you got pregnant today. I laughed because I didn't know what else to do. The doctor said it's not easy to get pregnant, that with my endometriosis, the chances are almost zero. You know that. But he insisted, put his hand on my still flat belly, and repeated with that unshakable certainty. "No, but today I'm absolutely certain you got pregnant. I feel it." I tried to ignore it, change the subject, pretend it was just his fantasy, but those words kept echoing in my head like an omen. 2 months later, with my period late and that strange feeling in my body, I took the test. It came back positive. That was a gigantic blow that left me paralyzed in the bathroom, holding that test with 2 pink lines. I wasn't ready. I didn't want to be a mother again. I was 35 years old. My career was finally taking off after years of effort. Our house was beautiful and organized the way I'd always wanted. I wanted to enjoy the marriage, travel, enjoy this phase of life. And now everything was going to change because a baby was coming. A baby I didn't ask for, didn't plan for, didn't desire. The first weeks of pregnancy were horrible in a way I never admitted to anyone at the time. I wasn't happy. Not happy at all. I'd look at the positive test stored in the drawer and feel panic, not joy. I felt fear, not hope. And the guilt for not feeling what I thought I should feel was almost worse than the fear. What kind of woman isn't happy to discover she's pregnant? What kind of mother was I going to be if I couldn't even love the idea of this baby? Kyle noticed my anguish even when I tried to hide it. So he started trying to please me in every way possible, as if he could buy my happiness with romantic gestures and gifts. You've been dying to have a dog since childhood, right? You always talked about it. I'm going to get you a dog. It'll be good for you to have company. And one sunny Sunday we went to a breeder in Woodinville and bought a small, fluffy puppy of an expensive breed that he insisted on paying for. But I was angry at that innocent little dog that only wanted love and attention. Really angry, an irrational, an ugly feeling that embarrassed me. Because I was pregnant, nauseous, with my body changing in ways I couldn't control, my hormones completely crazy, making me cry over anything. And I couldn't feel love even for a small animal that depended on me. If I couldn't love a puppy, what kind of mother was I going to be? The thought haunted me every night when I couldn't sleep. Kyle insisted after a few weeks we need to take her to the vet for exams, shots, see if everything's okay. It's our responsibility. I agreed because it was the right thing to do. We went to a veterinary clinic in Ballard that was near his work, and it was there, in that room, smelling of disinfectant, with posters of happy dogs on the walls, that everything started, though I didn't know it yet. The veterinarian who saw us was pretty young, must have been about 30, blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail, professional smile, and she was wearing a wedding ring, I noticed, because I always noticed those details. And when she started examining the puppy, speaking in that soft voice that veterinarians use with scared animals, asking questions about feeding and behavior, I noticed something that made my stomach churn. They already knew each other. There was a familiarity in the way Kyle spoke to her, a comfort that went beyond client and professional. It wasn't anything obvious, no strange looks, no inappropriate touching, no inside jokes, but it was there, subtle as perfume in the air. Kyle had worked for an elite Seattle family for years, taking care of their properties in Medina and Mercer Island. A family with horses, boats, collector cars, and dogs, several purebred dogs that needed special care. He took their animals to that clinic every 15 days for checkups, treatments, emergencies, so it made complete sense that he'd know the veterinarian. It made logical, rational, adult sense. There was nothing wrong with knowing the professional who took care of your work animals, but there was something I couldn't explain, couldn't name, but that stuck to me like cold humidity. I don't know if it was the way she smiled when he walked in. I don't know if it was the way he said hi a bit too quickly, too casually. I don't know if it was female intuition, pregnant paranoia, or fear of what I didn't want to see. But when she looked at me, just for a second, just a quick glance, I felt it. Something's off here. She's been married for 4 months, wearing a new ring that still shines. But something's deeply wrong in this room. I went home with that strange feeling in my stomach that wasn't pregnancy, nausea. It was something deeper, Marty vis. That feeling when you know something's wrong but have no proof whatsoever. I sat on the couch and did what desperate women do. I Googled, husband loses sexual interest during wife's pregnancy. I found dozens of articles, forums, posts from pregnant women complaining about the same thing. Psychological explanations about how some men see their wife as a mother when she gets pregnant and temporarily lose sexual desire. I read everything, convinced myself, breathed, relieved. That was it. It was normal. It was temporary. Because Kyle was pulling away in small but undeniable ways. As my belly grew month by month, he'd seek me out less for intimacy, always with reasonable excuses, work, fatigue, back pain, money, stress. He'd stay longer at work, said the family he worked for was demanding more from him. He'd come home later, always with logical explanations that made sense when said out loud. And I always believed because I wanted to believe, because I needed to believe, because the alternative was admitting something that would destroy everything. I was in my second trimester, belly already starting to show under baggy clothes. When I started having severe insomnia, I'd stay awake until 2, 3 in the morning. Kyle sleeping deeply beside me, while I stared at the ceiling thinking about the baby's room, about how our life would change when he was born. Trying to convince myself everything was okay, that I'd love that baby when he arrived, that we were going to be a happy family like in those Instagram photos I saw of other radiant mothers. It was 1 in the morning on some random Tuesday when a voice inside my head, clear as if someone had whispered in my ear, asked, "Have you ever looked at his phone?" The thought scared me with its intensity. I'd never looked, not once in 8 months of marriage. We had trust, or at least I thought we did. We'd been friends for decades. We'd known each other since teenagers. Why would I need to look at his phone? But the question wouldn't leave my head like an annoying song playing on loop. His phone was on the coffee table, screen dark, charging, me in the dark living room with only the light from the muted TV, casting shadows on the walls, imagining where to put the crib, whether to paint the walls blue or yellow, what curtains to choose. And that insistent voice, "Look, just once, just to be sure," just to shut up that annoying voice and go back to sleeping in peace. I picked up the phone with slightly trembling hands. Back then, 2011, there was no WhatsApp in the United States yet, just basic SMS. I opened his messages expecting to find nothing, expecting to feel stupid for having suspected, expecting to be able to laugh at myself tomorrow. I started scrolling through the list, work messages, friends, his mother, nothing much, and then I saw it. A number with no saved name. A message sent at 10:45 at night a few hours ago while I was pretending to sleep. "Hi, my love. So happy. Just 3 more days. Can't wait for you." I read it again, and again until the words lost meaning and became just shapes on the bright screen. "My love, just 3 more days. Can't wait for you." Each word was a stab, but my brain was still trying to rationalize, find innocent explanations. Who sent this? When exactly? Why didn't he delete it if there was something to hide? Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe it was a friend joking. Maybe it was spam. Maybe. My first reaction wasn't rational, wasn't calm, wasn't what self-help books recommend. How does a woman who's 4 months pregnant, vulnerable, fragile, hormones on a roller coaster, dreaming about the baby's room minutes before, see a message like that and stay controlled? How do you take a deep breath and think clearly when your world is crumbling in slow motion? I woke him up, shaking his shoulder hard. Kyle, wake up. Wake up now." He was still half asleep, confused, disoriented in the dark. "What message is this? Who's this person who sent you this? Tell me now." I shoved the phone in his face with the message glowing like an accusation. And then I saw it. Saw the change in his expression, that second of pure panic before the mask fell into place. He started stuttering, fumbling, looking for words that wouldn't come. And I knew. Women aren't stupid, no matter how much they try to convince us otherwise. We have that essence of seeing, of perceiving the hidden, of noticing when something's rotten even when everything seems perfumed. And I saw in that moment, with crystal clarity, cutting through all my previous denials, that everything I didn't want to believe was actually happening. My husband was lying, and it wasn't a small lie about forgetting to pay a bill. It was a lie that would change everything. It's nobody. It's nothing. You're seeing things. But the more he denied, the more he tried to turn the tables, the more certain I was. The fight was ugly. Really ugly. Me, pregnant in my nightgown, screaming, crying, demanding answers he refused to give. Him saying I was crazy, paranoid, that pregnancy hormones were making me irrational, that I was creating problems out of nothing. You're seeing things that don't exist. You need to calm down. Think about the baby. He ended up sleeping on the couch after hours of circular fighting where nothing was resolved. I slept maybe 2 hours, if you can call that sleep, because I had a surgery scheduled for 6 in the morning at Harborview Medical Center, a trauma surgery I knew would last all day, a serious, complex case that would require all my concentration. I couldn't cancel. People depended on me, The patient depended on me. I left the house at 5:30 in the morning without looking at him, with swollen eyes from crying and 4 hours of accumulated sleep over 2 days. I drove to the hospital on autopilot, empty mind, body functioning on pure programming, changed clothes, washed my hands following protocol, entered the operating room at 6 on the dot. The surgery was gigantic as predicted. Car accident, multiple trauma, blood everywhere, 6 surgeons working in perfect sync. I entered the operating room at 6 in the morning when the sun was rising over Seattle. I left at 5:30 in the afternoon when the sun was setting. 12 hours standing under surgical lights that burn your eyes, focused on every movement, passing instruments with millimeter precision, saving a life while mine was falling apart on the other side of those double doors. I saved a stranger from death while I couldn't save my marriage from shipwreck. I drove home exhausted to the bone, body aching, feet throbbing, heavy belly. I left my car in front of our apartment complex thinking I'd just go in quickly, grab something and go out to buy bread. But when I walked slowly past the lobby, the building manager, a man in his 50s who'd always been kind to me, stopped me with a strange expression. "Amanda, where are you going?" "To my place," I answered, confused, showing the key in my hand. Why was he asking me this? He slowly shook his head, uncomfortable, avoiding my eyes. "Don't go now. Stop by your mom's first. She lives in Building A, right. Go there first. Don't go to your place yet." My stomach dropped. I started shaking. Why? What happened? Was there a fire? A break-in? What? I went to my mother's apartment with jelly legs, heart beating irregularly, mind already imagining the worst possibilities. I knocked on the door. She opened already crying. "Mom, what happened?" "We fought yesterday, but is it serious?" "What was it?" She pulled me inside, made me sit on her couch that smelled like lavender as always, held my hands that were freezing. "A moving truck pulled up this morning, honey, right after you left for work. Everyone saw, took all your things. All your things. Your apartment is empty." "No." The word came out in an incredulous whisper. "No, he wouldn't do that. We're setting up the baby's room. We bought new furniture last month. There are his little things. The clothes Emma gave me, the crib my friend lent us. It doesn't make sense. It makes no sense at all." But as I spoke, I already knew it made sense. It made terrible and crystal clear sense. My mother took the key from my purse because my hands were shaking too much to hold it. "Let's go see, honey. You need to see with your own eyes." We went up together in the elevator, in heavy silence. She opened the door to my apartment, our apartment, with the key I couldn't hold properly, and when I walked in, the world literally stopped. It's not an exaggeration. Time froze. The apartment was completely empty. Furniture gone, clothes gone, everything gone, walls echoing, marks on the carpet where the couch used to be, holes in the walls where the pictures hung, empty, as if no one had ever lived there. There is only one thing in the middle of that devastation. The baby clothes scattered across the living room floor, tiny onesies, little socks, that blanket my mother had crocheted, deliberately left there like a message. Like a statement, like a specific and planned cruelty. He knew I'd see that and understand the meaning. "You and this baby mean nothing to me. Everything's gone. Only this I don't want is left." I can't explain what I felt in that moment because the words don't exist to describe that sensation. It's as if you're not there anymore, as if you're floating above your own body watching a tragedy happen to someone else, as if you're trapped between 2 dimensions. Between 2 worlds, the world where you were setting up a baby's room and planning the future, and the world where all of that was destroyed in a matter of hours while you worked. "This isn't real," my brain kept repeating. "It can't be real. It has to be a nightmare. I'll wake up and everything will be in place." But it was real. as real as the smell of emptiness in the apartment, as real as the marks on the carpet, as real as those tiny clothes on the cold floor. A hole opened in my soul in that moment, a hole so deep and dark I couldn't see the bottom. Everything we were building, all the plans made on nights with wine and conversation, all the dreams shared on lazy Sunday mornings, taken away in a moving truck while I worked. And he left the baby clothes on the floor. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't rush. It was deliberate. It was planned. It was cruel in a way that took my breath away. For me to see, for me to understand, for me to suffer exactly the way he wanted me to suffer. In that moment, with my mother holding me because my legs wouldn't hold me anymore. The 35-year-old Amanda who lived until then ceased to exist forever. Because I had to be strong for the child I was expecting and didn't want. I had to be strong to look at that empty room and find a way to keep breathing. I had to be strong to keep living when every cell in my body just wanted to give up. But the person I was, the person who believed in happy endings and true love, died there in that empty room that echoed my difficult breathing. 2 days later, living in my mother's apartment because I had nowhere else to live, I was coming back from another surgery in the late afternoon. The sun was setting over Puget Sound, painting the sky pink and orange as if the world hadn't ended. And that's when I saw him coming out of our building. I corrected myself mentally with a black rolling suitcase, that same suitcase we used on our honeymoon 6 months ago, getting into a yellow taxi waiting in front. And in an impulse I can't explain, in a moment of madness or clarity or desperation, I followed that taxi through the streets of Seattle until I discovered exactly where my husband was living now. His taxi wound through the streets of Seattle for 20 minutes. That felt like 2 hours. My heart beating so hard I could hear the pulse in my ears. He went to an apartment complex in the suburbs, one of those generic sets with beige facade and tiny balconies that all look the same. I stopped across the street, turned off the engine, and watched him get out of the taxi. Pay, grab the suitcase. He greeted the doorman by name with that casual familiarity of someone who's already lived there for a while. "Hi, Ashley," he said, smiling. Ashley went up the stairs with the suitcase as if it were the most natural thing in the world, as if he hadn't just destroyed an entire life. I waited for him to disappear inside the building. I waited for my heart to slow down enough to cross the street without fainting. I crossed trembling, heavy belly, hands sweating despite the November cold. The doorman looked at me when I approached, and I didn't even need to ask. His expression changed when he saw my belly, my face swollen from crying. "You're looking for Kyle, aren't you?" He didn't ask. He stated, as if he already knew I'd show up eventually. "That man who just walked in, does he live here?" My voice came out firmer than I expected. The doorman looked uncomfortable, looked around as if searching for an exit. "He does, ma'am?" "Alone?" I asked, already knowing the answer, but needing to hear it out loud. Heavy silence. He sighed. "No, ma'am. He lives with Ashley in apartment 3B. Ashley, the veterinarian. The woman with the wedding ring who examined my puppy 8 weeks ago. The pretty young woman who smiled at my husband with that familiarity that made my stomach churn. The woman I felt was wrong but tried to ignore because it didn't make logical sense. Because I had no proof. Because suspecting without reason is something crazy, controlling women do. But I wasn't crazy. My intuition was screaming the truth. My head refused to accept. "Sir, please." My hands were shaking so much I needed to hold on to the brick wall to balance. "I'm 4 months pregnant with this man's baby. This man is my husband. Married 8 months. We fought 2 days ago, but it's not possible he's living here. It must be a mistake. It must be someone else." I was bargaining with reality, begging the universe for everything to be a giant misunderstanding we'd laugh about someday. The doorman looked at me with genuine pity, that kind of pity you see in strangers' eyes when they witness your life falling apart. "He rented this apartment 15 days ago, ma'am. I'm sorry. I really am sorry. 15 days. 2 weeks before emptying our house. While I daydreamed about colors for the baby's room walls, he was signing a lease with another woman. While I researched cribs online, he was planning every detail of his escape. It was all premeditated, all calculated, all coldly executed. And I was there, pregnant with his child, completely in the dark like an idiot. And her husband. My voice came out in a hoarse whisper. She, ... Isn't she married? The doorman shook his head with a somber expression. She was married when Kyle moved in here. Had about 4 months of marriage. Her husband came to get his stuff last week. It was an ugly scene. For months. She'd been married for months when she examined my puppy in that room smelling of disinfectant. When she looked at me with those eyes, I swore were hiding something. When she touched my husband's work dogs twice a month. For months, she was cheating on her husband with mine. And now they were living together, building a life on the wreckage of 2 marriages. I drove back to my mother's house in a state of shock so deep I don't remember the route I took. I didn't cry. I couldn't. It was as if my body had shut down all emotions to protect me from feeling all of that at once, because feeling everything at once would kill me. I functioned on autopilot. Breathe, blink, turn the wheel, stop at the light, accelerate, basic functions, while my brain tried to process the impossible. But then, on a gray Wednesday, 3 days later, when I thought nothing could surprise me anymore, he looked for me, showed up at my mother's house at 10 in the morning when he knew she was at work, honked on the street, and for a second, one idiotic, pathetic, desperate second, I thought, he's going to apologize. He realized the monstrous mistake he made. He's going to kneel, cry, beg for a second chance. He'll say he loves us, that he wants to be a father, that it was a moment of temporary insanity. I went down the stairs from my mother's building with stupid hope blooming in my chest, hating myself for still feeling hope after everything. He was standing there, on the sidewalk, handsome as always in that blue shirt I'd given him for his birthday, eyes hidden behind sunglasses even though it was a cloudy day. And when he opened his mouth, he killed the last spark of hope I still kept. I want a divorce. I came to tell you in person because you deserve at least that. I was 4 months pregnant. My apartment was empty. My life was destroyed. I was living with my mother like I was 17 again, and he wanted a divorce. Just that. No apologies, no explanations, no acknowledgement of what he'd done. Why? Was all I could ask, voice coming out, hoarse and small, because I want to marry her. Ashley, we fell in love. These things happen. You'll understand someday. I looked at him, at the man I loved, at the father of the baby growing inside me, making my belly stretch and my feet swell, at the best friend of 2 decades who'd become a stranger, and something inside me hardened in that moment. It wasn't anger. It was something colder, harder, more permanent. Fine. You can have your divorce, but only after our son is born. He started to protest, but I raised my hand. You don't have your father's name on your birth certificate, remember? You told me that on our 3rd date, drunk, crying. I'm not doing that to my son. He'll have your name on the certificate. After that, you can marry whoever you want and go to hell. The following months were a gray and suffocating blur like Seattle winter fog that never lifts. I'd get up when the alarm went off, go to work because I needed the money and because staying home meant being alone with my thoughts. Call me back, sleep, or try to sleep while the baby kicked my ribs, reminding me he was there, wanted or not. The insomnia was constant and brutal. I'd spend entire nights staring at the ceiling of my mother's guest room, feeling every movement of the baby, thinking, how am I going to do this alone? How am I going to raise a child when I can barely take care of myself? Working was my only refuge, my only anchor to reality. In the operating room, I had total control. I knew exactly what to do. Every instrument had its specific place on the tray. Every procedure had its established protocol. There, following those rigid rules under fluorescent lights that erased any shadow, nothing was chaotic. There I could save lives with millimeter precision, while mine fell apart in slow motion like glass falling on the floor. But there was a moment. A specific moment in the 6th month of pregnancy where I thought, with crystal clarity, I can't take it anymore. I was alone in my mother's apartment on a Sunday afternoon. She'd gone to visit a friend, me, 7 months pregnant, huge, swollen, exhausted to the bone, looking out the window at Seattle's gray sky that never changes. And I thought it would be easier to simply not be here anymore. It would be easier for the baby never to be born than to be born to a broken mother who can't even love the idea of him. I'm not going to romanticize this by saying it was a passing moment of weakness. I'm not going to pretend it was just a thought that passed quickly. It was real. It was concrete. It was a serious consideration that stayed with me for hours. It wasn't a moment of clarity or spiritual strength. It was pure and simple desperation. It was a hole so deep, so dark, so absolute that I couldn't see any possible way out. And if it weren't for the baby moving strongly at that exact moment, a kick in the ribs that hurt, that made me double over. That viscerally reminded me there was another life there besides mine. I honestly don't know what would have happened in that silent room with closed curtains. Ethan was born on a cold January morning in 2012, when Seattle was covered by that rare snow that makes the entire city stop. 18 hours of labor, my mother holding my left hand, my daughter Emma holding the right. No father in the waiting room. No husband counting contractions, just us 3 women and a stubborn baby who didn't want to be born. When I finally heard that first cry, loud and indignant, I felt something break and rebuild inside me at the same time. It wasn't love at first sight like in the movies. It was more like recognition. Hi, you. So it's you. We're going to have to figure this out together because I have no idea what I'm doing. Kyle found out through social media. His sister saw the photos Emma posted me holding. Ethan still bloody, crying not from happiness but from exhaustion and relief at having survived. She went to visit, meet her nephew, took pictures, sent them to Kyle. When Ethan was a month old, and I was starting to understand that new reality of never sleeping and nursing every 2 hours, Kyle showed up, called first. I wanted to see the baby. Come? Apa? Come. I let him because I thought it was the right thing, that every child deserves to meet their father, even if the father's a coward. He arrived empty-handed, no gift, no flowers, nothing. He picked up Ethan with that hesitation of someone who's never held a newborn. Looked at that red, wrinkled little face. Wow, he really does look like me. He's cute, and that's it. 5-minute visit. No real emotion, no apology, no acknowledgement of what he'd done. No questions about how the delivery was, if I needed help, if everything was okay. He handed the baby back like returning a borrowed book and left. Can we sign the divorce papers now? I asked when he was at the door, hand on the doorknob, already half turning to leave. He shook his head. I scheduled the lawyer. Wednesday, 2 in the afternoon. Downtown office. Can you make it? I could. We went together that cold Wednesday. Me, Kyle, my daughter Emma, holding baby Ethan, who was 6 weeks old. Elegant office in the Smith Tower with a view of Elliott Bay. Expensive suited lawyer asking those clinical questions about division of assets that didn't exist because he'd taken everything. We sat in front of that huge mahogany desk, divorce papers already printed and organized in neat stacks. The lawyer explaining clauses in a monotone voice that made me want to sleep. And out of nowhere, completely out of nowhere, Kyle said, "Wait, I don't want to get divorced anymore." The lawyer stopped talking. Emma looked at me. I looked at Kyle, not understanding anything. "Excuse me, what if we try again?" he said, as if he were suggesting going to the movies, casual, as if he hadn't just exploded our lives. I was 6 weeks postpartum, still bleeding, still 20 pounds overweight, still waking up every 2 hours to nurse a baby who cried nonstop. Vulnerable in every way a person can be vulnerable. And the man who had destroyed my life was proposing reconciliation. Kyle, ... What? I know, I messed up. I broke up with Ashley. It was a huge mistake. We can rebuild. For Ethan, he deserves to have his parents together, doesn't he? We left that room without signing the papers. My mind spinning in circles, trying to process. Emma pulled me aside in the elevator, whispered, "Mom, you're not seriously considering this?" But I was already considering it because I was desperate and alone and terrified at the idea of raising a baby by myself. Because a pathetic part of me still believed that love could fix anything. Because I wanted to believe that people changed. For 2 months, gray and rainy. February and March we tried, hidden from my mother because she would have killed me if she knew. She hated Kyle with violent intensity, and rightfully so. I'd go to his family's house in Fremont where he was living with his mother after breaking up with Ashley. We'd talk. He'd say all the right things in that soft voice that made me fall in love years ago. It was temporary insanity. I never stopped loving you. We can be a family again. And I wanted to believe so desperately that I forced myself to ignore the signs. But we couldn't have sex. I wasn't ready physically or emotionally. My body still recovering from childbirth. My mind still processing trauma. Every time he got close, every time he touched me, I saw the empty apartment, saw the clothes on the floor, saw him entering that building with the suitcase to live with her, saw everything except the man in front of me saying he loved me. Until one day in March, when the daffodils were starting to sprout in Seattle Gardens, we were in his mother's living room watching TV, and he took off his shirt because he was hot. And I saw a right there on his left chest, over his heart, tattooed in black cursive letters, the initials A-me, Ashley Miller. Her name permanently marked on his skin, he loot, ati me. I looked at the tattoo, and we stayed there in heavy silence while the TV played some sitcom with canned laughter that sounded obscene. I didn't say anything in that moment. I got up, grabbed my purse, left, drove to my mother's house with silent tears running down that I didn't even try to wipe. I called him the next day with a firm voice I didn't recognize as mine. "It's not going to work, Kyle. You have her name tattooed on your chest. Permanently. How am I going to kiss you? How am I going to sleep with you? How do I look at you without seeing that?" Silence on the other end. "You should stay with her." "I'm not going to be able to do this. We're not going to be able to do this." And then began the strangest and most manipulative phase of all. Kyle became a born-again Christian overnight, started attending a megachurch in Bellevue, those with live bands and stage lights. Went to all the services Wednesday, Sunday morning, Sunday night, study groups. He'd call me with that recent convert voice, full of religious jargon that sounded fake. "I'm praying every day for God to restore our family. He's working in my heart. I'm studying to be a youth pastor. We can start over in Christ." He'd show up at my mother's building door unannounced. Honk. And I'd go down because I was an idiot. Because I felt sorry for him. Because I thought, he's my ex-husband, my son's father. We have decades of history. Maybe God really changed him. Maybe miracles happen. Maybe this time it's different. We'd get in his car that smelled like vanilla air freshener. He'd talk about church, about the pastor's messages, about how God was transforming him into a new man, and I'd listen, kinda hypnotized, wanting to believe. But then I started noticing something that left me cold. He never asked about Ethan. He'd talk about me, about us, about reconciliation, about restored family. But never, "How's our son? Is he sleeping better? Is he growing well? Can I see him?" It was always about getting me back. Ethan was just a manipulation tool, a convenient excuse, a means to an end. The baby he'd abandoned didn't really matter. Only having control over me again mattered. I let him take Ethan twice, maybe 3 times, because even noticing the manipulation, I still had that pathetic fantasy that my son deserved to have a father. I didn't have a present biological father. Kyle also didn't have his father's name on his certificate. I wanted to break that cursed cycle of abandonment that passed from generation to generation. But he'd take the baby, stay an uncomfortable hour not knowing what to do, return him, and the space between visits kept growing. 1 week, 2 weeks, a month, 2 months, and then he simply stopped. until one August afternoon, 8 months after Ethan was born. Kyle called with that voice I already knew well, the ultimatum voice, cold and calculated. I'm giving you one last chance, Amanda. Either you come back to me now, build our family again the way God wants, or I never look at you again. And I never want to know about Ethan. He ceases to exist for me. Choose now. I stayed silent, processing the monstrosity of what he was saying. He was using our son, our 8-month-old baby, who had barely started crawling, as bargaining chips. Come back to me, or I completely abandon the child. I took a deep breath, looked at Ethan sleeping in the stroller next to me, with his cheeks squashed on the pillow, and said the hardest thing I've ever said in my life. If that's how you want it, Kyle, then that's exactly how it's going to be. That was 14 years ago. Ethan's 17 now, turning 80 next month, and Kyle kept his promise with surgical precision and admirable cruelty. Never looked at me again. Never asked about his son. Never. We run into each other at parties with teenage friends that still happen. Every few years, summer barbecues, 40th birthdays, weddings of mutual friends. He arrives, sees me across the room, turns his face, as if I were invisible, as if those 80 months of marriage never happened, as if Ethan doesn't exist, as if he could erase us from his story just by deciding not to look. He pays child support religiously, the absolute minimum determined by the Seattle court, $350 a month, a joke considering his salary, but always on time, automatically transferred every 5th of the month. Because he knows if he's late one day, there'll be legal problems, there'll be fines, his salary will be garnished. Not because he cares about his son, but because he cares about avoiding consequences. Never an extra cent. Never a birthday present. Never a Merry Christmas. Never a how was the first day of school. Nothing. Absolute silence for 14 years. Next month is the last payment. Ethan turns 18 in October, and I know with the certainty of death and taxes that after that Kyle will completely disappear from our lives, if he hasn't already disappeared. He'll stop sending money, and it'll be as if he never existed. As if he'd never been a father. As if he could simply delete this inconvenient part of his life and move on without looking back. But you know what's most incredible? Most surprising? Most unexpected of all, Ethan's okay. I don't know how. I think it's divine work, angel protection, a real miracle. But my son is incredible, truly happy. Not that fake happiness you force. Balanced, funny, kind, gets good grades, has real friends, plays basketball on the school team, works part-time at a coffee shop, plans to major in mechanical engineering. He's a functional and wonderful human being who doesn't carry the pain of abandonment the way I thought he would. He knows who his father is, knows the whole story, or almost all. Some parts I still kept, because I don't know if he needs to know every cruel detail. Knows his father chose not to be part of his life. Knows he pays minimum support. Knows we run into each other at parties and his father pretends he doesn't exist. But Ethan doesn't suffer from it in a way that destroys. He processed it in a healthy way that I'm still trying to understand. Mom, he told me once at 14, I can't miss something I never had. And I have you. I have Grandma. I have Emma. I have real family. I never spoke badly about Kyle to Ethan. Never. Even when I wanted to scream. When the hatred was so big, it burned in my throat. Even when Ethan asked at 5 years old, why doesn't my dad come to my birthday? And I wanted to say, because he's a selfish coward. I'd take a deep breath and say, sometimes adults make choices that are hard to understand, but it has nothing to do with you. You're incredible, because it wasn't about me. It was about giving my son space to form his own opinion without poisoning it with my pain. And Kyle doesn't know, has no idea of the wonderful son he has. Doesn't know Ethan built a robot that won the state competition. Doesn't know he was elected class representative, doesn't know he volunteers at an animal shelter every Saturday, doesn't know anything because he chose not to know. And I feel sad for him sometimes. Not for me, for him. Because Ethan is the best thing that came out of that whole story. And Kyle chose to lose that deliberately. But the reconstruction wasn't easy or linear or pretty. It was messy and painful and full of setbacks. In the first years after the ultimatum, I functioned on autopilot like a robot. Wake up, feed baby, work, come back, feed baby, sleep 2 hours, repeat. No joy, no plans, no hope, just basic survival. My mother took care of Ethan when I worked. Emma helped when she could between her own job and life. We were 3 women raising a baby, proving that family doesn't need a man to function. I started therapy when Ethan was 2 because I realized I wasn't getting better on my own. A therapist in Ballard named Dr. Sarah Chun, who didn't accept excuses or excessive self. You went through trauma, she'd say, in that direct way of hers. But trauma doesn't define you. You choose what you do with it now. It was 3 years of weekly therapy, sometimes twice a week when I was particularly bad, unearthing pain, processing anger, learning that I deserve love even while broken. I went back to school when Ethan was 4, did a specialization in neurological surgical instrumentation, a more complex and better paid area. It meant more time studying, less time with my son, more guilt, but it also meant being able to move out of my mother's apartment to our own place. A small apartment in Greenwood, 2 bedrooms, tiny backyard, but ours. For the first time since the empty apartment, a space that was ours and nobody could take away. I dated a few times over the years. Nothing serious. A guy I met on an app who was nice, but boring. A hospital colleague who wanted too much commitment too fast. One of Ethan's teachers' worst idea ever. Ended awkwardly. I always found flaws. Always ran away. Always sabotaged before it got real. Dr. Chun would say, "You're protecting your heart." It's understandable, but at some point you need to let someone in again or you'll be alone forever. The years kept passing. Ethan growing up, me getting older, scars becoming less painful but never completely disappearing. We moved to a bigger apartment when he turned 10. We adopted a dog, ironically also the same breed as that puppy that took me to Ashley's veterinary clinic. Ethan named him Max. Max slept in bed with us and barked at strangers and made us feel safe. But I still had bad days. Days where I'd see an apartment complex similar to that one in Ballard, and my heart would race. Days where I'd hear music that played at our wedding and had to leave the room. Days where Ethan would make some expression that reminded me of Kyle and I'd need to breathe deep not to cry. Trauma doesn't disappear. You just learn to live with it, to carry the weight in a way that doesn't completely break you. In 2015, I did something that changed my life in an unexpected way. I decided to look for my biological father again. Robert, that man who had rejected me when I was 15, who received me at 21 but didn't want a real relationship. I called my cousin in Oregon with trembling hands. Ask if he'll see me. A week of anxiety. Then, he wants to see you. Yes. Said he was waiting for you to call. I drove to Grants Pass, Oregon with Ethan, who was 13. My father picked me up at my cousin's house. When we looked at each other, it was like looking at a mirror of the future. Same eyes, same chin, same wrinkles at the corner of the mouth when smiling. He was 74 years old, hair completely white. I can't recognize you as my daughter because we didn't have a relationship together, he said, holding my hand with rough hands of someone who worked their whole life. But I can tell you one thing, and I want you to know. Your mother was, is, and always will be the love of my life. And then I did something crazy that could only come from years of therapy and growth. I convinced my mother to meet him. After 36 years apart, since that escape on the Greyhound bus when I was 4 years old, she said she wouldn't go. Couldn't go. It was too late. But she went, and when they saw each other in that house in Oregon with the whole family watching, I saw in their eyes something I hadn't seen before, love that survived decades and disasters and distance. They spent the last 7 years of his life together, Linda and Robert. Finally, They sold everything they had in Seattle and Oregon, moved together to a small town in Idaho where nobody knew their story, bought a simple house with a porch where they'd sit every afternoon watching the sunset over the mountains. They rebuilt lost time, closed the chapter that had been open for 4 decades. When he died of pancreatic cancer 2 years ago, my mother was holding his hand. She cried, but said she had no regrets. I had 7 perfect years with the love of my life. Some people never have that. And it was around that time, in 2018, at a birthday party on a farm in Idaho near where my parents lived, that I met Connor. I'd gone to spend my 43rd birthday visiting my mother. A new friend of hers invited me to a barbecue party at her farm. Maybe you'll find the love of your life there, she joked, without knowing how prophetic she was being. I laughed. Idaho. I bet everyone's been married since high school here. I saw a guy in a red plaid shirt playing guitar in the corner of the backyard. Tall, broad shoulders of someone who works with their hands, dark hair with some gray streaks. I asked my friend who he was. Oh, that's Connor. Owns this farm. Single. Can you believe it? 45 years old and never married. Says he never found the right person. Something about the way he played guitar, concentrated and serene, attracted me. When he started playing Hallelujah by Leonard Cohen, I shouted across the yard, I sing that. Can I sing with you? Blatant lie. I can't sing anything decent, but it worked. He smiled, that slow smile that lit up his whole face, and waved for me to sit next to him. I sang horribly. He pretended it was good. We talked all night about everything and nothing. Farms, Seattle, music, family, life. 7 years later, I'm married to him. We live on that same farm in Idaho where we met, 300 acres of land with horses and cows and chickens and that deep silence only the countryside has. It's a completely different relationship from anything I've known. Light, pleasant, no drama. Connor supports me in everything without making it a sacrifice. When I travel for work, now I work as a surgical consultant, traveling around the country, training teams. He takes care of everything without complaining. When I have difficult days where the past comes back, he's there without invasive questions. It's not perfect because nothing is. Connor has his own neuroses obsession with organizing the barn, quirks about animal feeding schedules, stubborn way of doing everything his way. I have scars that still hurt, anxiety that appears out of nowhere, occasional nightmares about empty apartments, difficulty trusting completely even after years. But it's real. It's honest. It's built on solid foundations of mutual respect and daily choice to be together. Ethan loves Connor, not as a father. He'll never call anyone father because that word was poisoned for him, but as a friend, mentor, positive male figure who shows that men can be trustworthy. Connor taught Ethan to drive a tractor, fix fences, take care of horses, things Kyle will never teach because he's not there. Things that build character more than DNA. I still have days where anxiety comes back strong. Days where I see an apartment complex and my heart accelerates for no reason. Days where music from our wedding plays on the radio and I need to change the station quickly. Days where I look at Ethan, now taller than me, deep voice, starting to shave, and think, how does his father manage not to know this incredible human being? How does he sleep at night knowing he chose this? But I'm here, alive, rebuilt in an imperfect but real way, with a healthy marriage I didn't think I deserved. Wonderful children. Emma's 33 now, married, gave me 2 beautiful grandchildren. Ethan's going to college next year, University of Washington, mechanical engineering, partial scholarship, career I love, traveling the whole country, teaching what I know, and the Amanda who died in that empty room in 2011, she needed to die. So this Amanda here, stronger, wiser, more whole, could be born. I learned things about myself and about life that I never would have learned without trauma. I learned that you don't overcome trauma. You learn to live with it. Integrate it, let it teach you without letting it define you. I learned that strength isn't not falling. Strength is getting up every time you fall. even when getting up seems impossible, even when staying on the ground would be easier. I learned that you can love someone deeply and still need to let them go for your own survival. I learned that your children are always watching, and what you teach them isn't with pretty words or sermons, it's with choices, with actions, with how you respond when life knocks you down. Ethan saw his mother get up from an empty apartment, saw that you can be abandoned while pregnant and still rebuild a beautiful life. Saw that the end of the story doesn't need to be defined by others' actions. That's the legacy I leave him. Not money or possessions, but an example of resilience. If you're reading this and see yourself in my story, if you're pregnant and alone, if you found an empty apartment, if you're living with your mother, thinking life is over, listen carefully. You're not crazy. Your intuition is right. That feeling in your stomach when something seems wrong, that premonition you try to ignore because you have no proof, trust it. Women have been taught to doubt their own intuition, to rationalize the irrational, to forgive the unforgivable. Stop. Your intuition is protecting you, and if you're already at the rock bottom, if you've already discovered betrayal, if you're already destroyed, if you're pregnant or with small children thinking there's no way out, I see you. I know exactly where you are because I was there. I was in that dark room, considering not being here anymore. And I promise you, with everything I am, with everything I've lived, there's life on the other side of this. Good life, real life, worth living. It won't be easy, and anyone who says it will is lying. It won't be quick. Reconstruction takes years, not months. There'll be days where you'll want to go back because loneliness hurts more than abuse. Because the known is less scary than the unknown. Because at least when you were with him, you weren't alone. There'll be days where you'll doubt every decision. There'll be days where you'll look in the mirror and not recognize the broken woman looking back. But keep going. One day at a time, sometimes 1 hour at a time, sometimes 1 minute at a time. Accept help when offered. Pride doesn't pay bills or take care of babies. Get therapy, even thinking you can't afford it. Find clinics with sliding scale payment. Be kind to yourself when you fail because you will fail sometimes, and that's okay. Forgive yourself for not seeing signs earlier, for believing lies, for staying too long. You did the best you could with the information you had. The door is there in front of you. It might not seem like it because it's hidden behind fear and doubt and guilt and shame, but it's there. The doorknob is in your trembling hand. You just need to have the courage to turn it even without knowing exactly what's on the other side. And on the other side, there's a version of you that you don't know yet. A version stronger than you imagine is possible, wiser, more whole, freer. She's waiting for you right now. I promise you, with everything I went through, with everything I survived, with everything I rebuilt from the ashes of an empty apartment, she's waiting. And when you finally open that door and cross that threshold, she hug you and say, "You took your time. I knew you'd come. Welcome home." It took me years to find her. You can find her faster because now you know she exists, because now you know other women got there before and survived to tell the story. You're not alone on this journey, even when it seems like you are. Millions of us went through this, survived, rebuilt, and one day, maybe in 5 years, maybe 10, maybe more, you'll be sitting on a porch or in a coffee shop or at the park watching your children play, and you'll look back at that version of you reading this now, destroyed and desperate, and you'll feel deep compassion for her. You'll want to hug her and tell her everything will be okay, but you won't feel that sharp pain that cuts your breath anymore. You'll feel something different, something like gratitude for what that pain taught, pride for having survived, strength for knowing exactly what you're capable of. And you'll realize that his story ended in that empty apartment, but your story was just beginning. So breathe, cry if you need to, I cried oceans. Scream if it helps. I screamed in the car with closed windows until I was hoarse. Break things if necessary. I broke all the cheap dollar store plates. Feel all the anger, all the pain, all the betrayal. But after feeling, get up, put one foot in front of the other, another one, and keep walking until you get to this other side where I am now, where the sun shines differently and the air smells like new possibilities, where you wake up in the morning and the first thing you feel isn't pain, where you look in the mirror and recognize the woman looking back as someone who deserves love and respect and peace. I'm waiting for you here. We all are silent army of women who survived, who rebuilt, who learned they're much stronger than any man tried to convince them they weren't. The door is there. Your hand is on the doorknob. You know what to do. Turn it,